What exactly caused the KC-135 tanker crash, and what might have led to this disaster? Right now, investigators are examining several possible scenarios. One theory suggests a mid-air refueling malfunction, where the refueling boom may have snapped unexpectedly, forcing the trailing tanker into the tail section of the lead aircraft. Another possibility being discussed is that Iraqi militia groups could have fired a surface-to-air missile targeting the aircraft during the mission. A third explanation focuses on the extremely tight formation the two tankers were flying in, which may have resulted in an accidental mid-air collision. So what really caused this flying gas station to go down? On March 12, 2026, a serious incident unfolded in the skies over western Iraq. Here's what we currently know about the crash involving a U.S. Air Force KC-135 Stratotanker. The aircraft was operating inside what is normally considered friendly airspace, while actively supporting Operation Epic Fury. Before we break down the details of what might have happened in the air, make sure to subscribe to Telly Vortex and turn on notifications so you never miss our next deep military breakdown. According to CENTCOM and public flight tracking data, this was an enemy shootdown. It was an apparent mid-air collision between two KC-135s operating in tandem. One of the massive tankers went down in the Iraqi desert. The second aircraft immediately declared an in-flight emergency. Flight trackers watched as the surviving jets circled off the coast before finally making a desperate but safe landing at Ben Gurion Airport in Israel. When photos of the surviving plane emerged, the damage was shocking. A massive chunk of its vertical tail fin was completely sheared off. But how does an accident like this actually happen? When mid-air collisions occur between these 150-ton flying gas stations, it usually comes down to one of three terrifying scenarios. Scenario 1 is passing the gas. To keep strike packages in the fight longer, tankers often transfer fuel to each other. The receiving jet has to fly just feet below the leader's tail. A tiny throttle mistake or a sudden gust of wind can cause the massive jet to surge forward, instantly smashing its cockpit right into the leader's tail. The margin of error is basically zero. Normally, a standard KC-135 tanker mission flies with a minimum crew of 3, a pilot, co-pilot, and boom operator. However, officials have reported that at least 6 U.S. service members were aboard the aircraft. But U.S. Central Command wrote, at approximately 2 p.m. on March 12th, a U.S. refueling aircraft went down in western Iraq. 4 of 6 crew members on board the aircraft have been confirmed deceased as rescue efforts continue. Scenario 2 is when tankers fly in the dark. In combat zones, tankers fly in tight groups to hide from enemy air defenses. They go completely dark. It radios no active radar and lights out. If a pilot gets disoriented during a nighttime turn, they can easily drift off course and fly completely blind right into their wingman and crashed right into their tail or clipping off their wing section, thus resulting into a mid-air collision. Scenario 3 involves Iran's ongoing influence through proxies loyal to the regime. There was initial speculation that these forces might have fired a surface-to-air missile, bringing down one of the aircraft. But CENTCOM has officially stated that the crash was not caused by hostile or friendly fire. Given this official statement and the specific damage to the surviving plane's tail fin, all evidence currently points toward a mid-air collision or an accident involving the two tankers. The real reason behind all this, it might just be a misinterpretation of data. Why are these KC-135 tankers considered the lifeblood of this operation? Because without them, the operation simply cannot happen. Striking Iran from European bases like those in Cyprus, Greece, or Bulgaria means aircraft must cross immense distances.
Fighter jets like F-35s or F-16s simply do not have the internal fuel capacity for a multi-thousand-mile round trip. The KC-135 tankers act as a floating bridge. They rendezvous with the strike packages mid-air to top off their tanks, allowing them to penetrate Iranian airspace, drop their payloads, and make it back to Europe safely. If the tankers don't fly, the strike jets are grounded. So how does the US Navy factor into this massive geographic shift in strategy? During Operation Epic Fury, Allied bases were denied to American forces, so the flying tanker steps in. If key nations like Qatar and Saudi Arabia deny permission for military action from their soil due to political constraints, the US has to activate its second strategy. This means bypassing the immediate region for staging the attack and instead launching from the perimeter using European bases. However, distance is the ultimate enemy in aerial warfare, which completely rewrites the tactical playbook. The core of the new strategy is a massive logistic shift, heavily relying on the deployment of an armada of flying gas stations. The US will employ a coordinated deployment of dozens of KC-135 Stratotanker air-to-air refueling aircraft. These are moving from the continental United States and the UK directly into bases in Greece, such as Suda Bay and Bulgaria. These supertankers help carrier-based jets stay airborne for much longer. They also act as a crucial lifeline for B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, especially if those bombers need to enter Iranian airspace before the US has achieved air superiority. The KC-135 Stratotankers, laden with fuel, are in friendly airspace over Saudi Arabia, their crews aware that their unglamorous task could mean the difference between triumph and catastrophe. As the B-2s lift off, their jagged silhouettes blend into the night sky. Stealth is their shield, but distance is their enemy. Hours into the flight, they rendezvous with tankers flying over the canal, gulping fuel mid-air as F-18s circle protectively. The growlers emit a cacophony of electronic noise, masking the strike group's movements. Meanwhile, in underground command centers, US analysts watch real-time feeds, ready to redirect forces if Iran's radars flicker to life. Israel also used the same tactic to attack Iran, while the supertankers were the lifeline for the mission. At 9 in the morning, Israel launched more than a dozen aircraft. But it's a complicated process. They have to navigate or entirely bypass the airspace of neighboring countries like Syria and Iraq. To avoid hostile air defenses, defense analysts estimate the actual flight distance to reach central Iran is between 930 and 1,240 miles each way. Although these routes may seem straightforward, they involve complex planning, including calculations for air refueling and coordinating attack aircraft to pass through Jordan, Syria, and Iraq. Israel and US strategy was to attack Iran in 3 waves. The first wave targeted surface air-to-air sites, radar installations, and Iran's air defense headquarters in Tehran, Elam, and Khuzestan. The second wave focused on destroying ballistic missiles, and finally, the third wave targeted military manufacturing industries. With the air defense network fractured by Tomahawk cruise missiles usually fired from destroyers hundreds of miles away, the path is now clear. Now comes the strategic sites, like nuclear bunkers, which can be bombed by B-2 Spirit, the tip of the spear. Launching from bases in Jordan and the UAE, squadrons of F-15E Strike Eagles roar into the theater. These are the bomb trucks of the operation. Each F-15 is heavily loaded with JDAM guided bombs and small-diameter munitions. Remarkably, a single aircraft can carry up to 19 JDAMs, or roughly 28 small-diameter strike weapons. While the B-2 bombers focus on deeply buried bunker targets, the F-15s are tasked with hunting mobile threats. Their advanced radars sweep across the terrain, searching for ballistic missile launchers hidden in valleys and remote areas. Operating in coordinated pairs, the fighters release precision-guided bombs on missile convoys, storage hangars, and secondary command facilities. When the aircraft reach what pilots call Winchester, meaning they are out of weapons or running low on fuel, the mission is not over yet. Instead of returning to base, they link up with aerial refueling tankers using the standard refueling boom that connects directly to the aircraft's fuel port. The fighters then move to pre-planned tanker tracks established earlier in Phase 1, receiving thousands of pounds of fuel while still in flight before heading back toward the battlefield for another sortie. If you enjoy deep military technology breakdowns and strategic analysis like this, make sure to subscribe to Telly Vortex and turn on notifications so you never miss our next documentary on modern warfare.